Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda Bill 106-10, Declaration of Support of Voluntary Green Building Standards. Mrs. Boyce.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and Council, this has been before Council at 2 work sessions, and it was also on the agenda for your June 21st regular council meeting. It is a request that Council authorize the Mayor to sign a declaration of support for sustainable communities and a voluntary green building standard between Clark County and all other cities within Clark County. The purpose of this is to provide consistent implementation of the same voluntary alternative countywide. This approach is a result of a few builders' requests for a uniform set of guidelines for their customers. The code is also written by the International Code Council and the National Association of Home Builders in conjunction with one another. It's supported by your local building industry association, and I say that there's an Exhibit B, and I apologize it's not there. Exhibit B is a piece of paper that's on my desk. I really am sorry. And what it is it was specific home builders that were in support of this. You tabled action on this declaration. You wanted further discussion at the work session. We did have that additional discussion. It included such things as the benefits, what are the benefits to a home builder regarding countywide consistency and implementation of one standard, collaboration with other jurisdictions, and impacts to other partners if changes were made to the document that was before you. I did seek legal opinion on that. And the Clark County Prosecuting Attorney's Office is the one that wrote the agreement and approved it as to form. And he indicated that if there's any changes made by one party and others have already signed, the changes have to be approved by all the parties that have already signed, or the document is invalid because there is no meeting of the minds. And the City of Washougal City Attorney agreed with that. He noted that there is a 30-day opt-out under Section 3 if things don't seem to be, if our participation doesn't seem to be something that we want to continue to participate in. Therefore, I'm recommending that you make a motion authorizing the mayor to sign the declaration of support.
Mr. Mayor, I move that the City Council authorize the mayor to sign the declaration of support for the green building standards, voluntary green building standards.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the voluntary green building standards. Comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Mike?
Mr. Mayor, I rise in opposition to this agenda bill for 3 reasons. 1, I support Washougal retaining control over our legislative function. 2, I support adopting any standard that improves our ability to serve our citizens. And 3, nothing that government does initially voluntary remains voluntary for long. First and foremost, I support the City of Washougal retaining control over our legislative function, and I don't believe there's a need for us to put ourselves at a disadvantage relative to the rest of the cities in Clark County. If we give up our authority to determine the building codes, we do not control our own legislation. And I understand that this may not necessarily link us to giving up that authority, but it's a step in that direction. And personally, I refuse to be a rubber stamp for the sake of somebody else saving face. Furthermore, central planning doesn't work. Second, I support adopting building codes that improve our ability to serve our citizens. And I certainly would entertain and suggest that we adopt the alternative building codes of ICC 700, which is referenced here, so that builders have more than one code that they could use in our city. If that makes sense, then I say let's do it. But I don't believe that we need an interlocal agreement in order to do this. And in fact, it's quite possible that by accepting a regional compromise, we place ourselves at a disadvantage. And third, nothing that government does is voluntary for long. Today, the selling points of this agreement are that it's voluntary and that there is the assumption that the goals of the agreement are the goals that everybody supports. And I'd point the Council to Section 2, Paragraph B, which states, the parties will jointly collaborate on countywide green building goals, a regional approach to public participation. You'll notice that in the very language, there seems to be the overreach of end goals. The implication is plain, I believe, for people who wish to see it, and that is that this agreement lays the foundations for future enforcement of central planning goals of politically correct green standards. And I also wish to point out that in Section 5, Paragraph B, it states that decision-making will ordinarily be by consensus. But if no consensus can be reached, decision-making will be by a majority vote of all participants present, each having one vote. In the event of a tie vote, the project manager will make the final decision. The combination of these paragraphs leads me to believe that this is only a temporarily voluntary program, or at the very least, the foundation for a more permanent program. And once again, I got to say, central planning does not work. And if we delegate our 7-member council to a single vote in this new agreement, we give up further our protection of our citizens. So Mr. Mayor, I urge my fellow council members politely decline this entrapment and protect our citizens' best interests. And I yield the floor.
Other members? David?
Well, if you're going to have your thunder stolen, best hope you have is that it's somebody as articulate as Councilman Delavar was there. I hesitate to add to that, but I've looked over this voluntary green standard here in some depth. And I came to many of the same conclusions that Councilman Delavar did. But I also note that we, as he stated, that we don't really need to participate in this. The standard's available for builders to use. Washougal doesn't have to endorse it. But beyond that, my objections, and I'll try to focus just on the ones that Councilman Delavar didn't cover. I think it makes housing more expensive and less affordable. If you want affordable housing, slapping all kinds of expensive standards on it is not the way to get it. It raises energy costs on the production end. Granted, it will reduce energy costs over the life of the house, but I question whether that's a real savings because it costs so much more to build it in energy. This standard justifies the imposition of additional cost with questionable theories and manipulated data. And I'm in complete agreement with Councilman Delavar, and that is implementing the voluntary standard is but the camel's nose under the tent. Compulsive standards will follow, only the timing is in question. And the other thing I don't like about this, if you read this closely, the conclusion you come away with is that the goal here is to reduce our standard of living. And I'm not in favor of that. If you can find ways to do these things without reducing people's standard of living, I'm all for it. And I think the technology is there. I don't think a lot of the technology is mature yet, and therefore I think things like this are premature. But I think the time is coming when we can do a lot of these things without reducing people's standard of living and without impoverishing the people who fund the building of these houses. Thank you.
Other members? Okay, I've got a motion and a second to authorize the mayor to sign the declaration of support of the voluntary green building standards. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Abstain.
Motion carries.